Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again.
You're streaming with the Fantasy Follow. It's week 11 of fantasy football, everybody. We got one game in the books and a big day of Sunday football ahead of us. And it's the Sunday Pregame show on TFF Live. It starts right now. It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is the TFF Live Sunday Pregame show. Getting you ready for a big day of football action today. Week 11, getting even closer to your fantasy football playoffs. Going to get you ready with all of our information today. And as always, we are here for your live chats. Even if we are talking about other content, please feel free to drop us a chat. That is what we are here for, and that is what we love to do. If you're watching on replay, please feel free to drop us a comment. Let us know your thoughts about any of the information that we present today. But either way, let's get right into it, and we will start off as we normally do. Actually, before we start off over on the recap of last week, let's get a couple of early chats in here. We got an early chat here from Cash Money Wilson. Cash Money Wilson is here. You say, Cash Money, got to make my 6 picks. Still thinks I'll get to it before 1. Definitely good news on that one there, Cash Money. Your next follow-up is more what I wanted to talk about. And you say, is there any news on Lamar Jackson yet? I heard he's sick and it's 50-50. I have to play him in my one league. Based on what I've seen coming through so far on some of the shows and also on Twitter, it does look like Lamar Jackson is unlikely to play today. Nothing that I've heard has sounded positive at all that he is going to be able to play in this game. So I would definitely prepare a backup plan. I don't know if they're going to actually list him as out or if they're just going to have him as active and then if he's sick, not play him. I am looking on the list right now. For the Baltimore Ravens, they do not have Lamar Jackson listed as out. So it is going to be a situation if he is too sick to go. And as I have seen so far, that looks like that's what's going to be the case in that situation. So Cash Money, I would definitely keep an eye on that and make sure you know where you're at. You say you have to play against him, so that's good because you don't have to. That means you don't need a backup plan. And then you also say, and that Lions game was so cold, but I enjoyed it. Good to hear, Cash Money. Too bad it ended up in a tie there for you, but you ended up going with a one game that ended up in a tie, I guess. So, so the entire league, NFL football this year, games that Cash Money Wilson attends, 1 tie, no wins and losses. The rest of the league for the entire year, no ties. Everybody either wins or loses. So clearly, Cash Money. If any of you guys need ties for your favorite teams, just call up Cash Money Wilson. He'll show up. He'll get in the stands in the crowd for you, and he'll make sure that a tie happens. So that's all we need to do. Thanks, Cash Money Wilson, for the chat. Glad to have you back with us, and feel free to get into that 6 picks. Let's go ahead and go over to taking a look at the weekly recap, as we always start off the show here. Taking a look back at Week 10, the individual performances at each of the different positions. And we will start out, as we always do, at the quarterback spot. In Week 10, leading the way, it was Patrick Mahomes, 36.20 fantasy points last week, 50 pass attempts, 406 yards, 5 touchdowns. A very nice kind of, I guess you would say, bounce-back game for Patrick Mahomes. Dak Prescott in second. Interesting, those guys were 1 and 2 last week. And they are, of course, matching up this week, and that is one of our 6 picks. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We already talked about it a little bit with Cash Money Wilson, but we will give you some more information. Dak Prescott last week, 26.30. Josh Allen in third, 21.90. Trevor Siemian in fourth, 19.90, tied with Mac Jones, also at 19.90 last week. Of course, my computer picks now to decide to not cooperate all that much over at the running back spot. Last week, it was Daryl Williams leading the way for Kansas City. A lot to talk about here with Daryl Williams in Kansas City. I'm sure some of you will have some chat questions about this with Clyde Edwards-Helaire off of IR, and uncertain how much they're going to use him creates a bad spot for fantasy players here, especially given the fact that that is not an early game. At any rate, last week, Daryl Williams, it was 29.40 fantasy points, 43 yards on the ground, and 9 targets on all 9 of his catches. Reverse that. 9 catches on all 9 of his targets. It's early Sunday morning, guys. You know how it works. 101 yards, 1 touchdown through the air. Ramondre Stevenson last week paid off for you, 27.40 fantasy points. That was, of course, last week, not Thursday. A.J. Dillon, another player that you're going to look to this week, filling in for Aaron Jones with the unfortunate Aaron Jones injury. Last week, 26.80 fantasy points. Christian McCaffrey back in the fold, 26.10 last week. And then Jonathan Taylor, who's been great all year, 24.60 fantasy points in week 10. Taking a look at the wide receivers from last week, it was Deebo Samuel leading the way with 30.30 fantasy points, 97 yards, 5 targets on all I keep trying to say that backwards today. 5 catches on all 5 targets. We'll get this thing straight. We've only been doing this for like a year plus. 97 yards with a touchdown. He added 36 on the ground with a touchdown there as well. Stephon Diggs, breakthrough game for the season, 30.20 last week. CeeDee Lamb, 28.60. Again, Dallas, no Amari Cooper because of protocols this week. There are a lot of players to talk about here. Perhaps CeeDee Lamb has a nice game again as well. Tyreek Hill for Kansas City in fourth, 27.50. And Kendrick Bourne for New England in fifth, 24.10 last week. And then at the tight end spot in week 10, it was Travis Kelsey leading the way. Geez, Travis Kelsey never is the top tight end, right? 10 targets, 8 catches, 119 yards, 19.90 fantasy points. In second, Hunter Henry for the Patriots, 19.70. Mark Andrews in third, 18.30. Tyler Conklin from Minnesota, a possible guy that you've been streaming. I know I have, 16.10 last week. And then George Kittle again last week, 16.0 fantasy points for the San Francisco 49ers. So some good information there on last week. We will see how all that plays out as we look towards week 11 here. Let's get over to the chats next. I know that some of you guys are in play here, so I do want to get those, and then we'll talk about 6 picks after that. All right, let's see what we got here. Vansco is up, one of our regulars. Welcome back, Vansco. You say Lamar is forcing me to pivot to Kirk against Green Bay. Yep, going to be some interesting situations around this Lamar Jackson. Not the only player that's not playing for Baltimore today. Also, keep in mind, Marquise Brown is also out for the Baltimore Ravens this week. So that would have made for a nice day, I think, for Rashad Bateman, except for now you've got a backup quarterback situation to deal with there. I think it's Huntley is the backup there, is what I've heard. So this is going to be interesting. Again, also Latavius Murray appears to be back in the backfield. Perhaps they try to lean on the run a little bit more this week. A lot of things in play there for the Baltimore Ravens as we get closer to game time here. Saclane Mushtag. I really always hope I'm saying that name right. Saclane Mushtag, welcome back, one of our regulars to the stream. You say good morning. I say good morning as well. You say, what are some bold predictions you have for this week? Chaos. Plenty of chaos is what I have. Thanks for the A.J. Dillon call last week. He went super bonkers. I'm glad to hear that. I'm predicting that he has a big game again today. I am as well. I really think that for these couple of weeks that Aaron Jones is unfortunately out with injury, I think A.J. Dillon is a guy that's going to kind of prove his worth. I think that there's a reason why he's been seeing more action as the year has gone on and has actually been more fantasy relevant, even with both of them in the lineup. I think perhaps with a couple of big games here, he earns even more playing time, and it'll be setting up a little bit of an interesting situation there in Green Bay because I believe Aaron Jones just recently signed an extension there. Of course, A.J. Dillon was the guy that was drafted and created a lot of question marks on why they drafted a guy like that when they already had Jones there. So, never a dull moment there in Green Bay with everything that goes on. That might be more of an off-season deal. Vansco, you say Lamar is inactive on your apps. That is good information. I look on, I have a platform here that gives all the inactives for each team. And yes, you are right. Lamar Jackson, I wonder if that was a late change to the inactive list, because I might have just missed it. But I thought at first glance I did not see Lamar on that list there, but he definitely is on that list now. So thank you, Vansco, for that. For those of you that are playing Lamar Jackson, that does help you out there. Rolando RG is up next. You say start Hockenson or Goddard. Thank you, my man. And as always, I like to thank you guys right back anytime you say thanks, because obviously without you guys, we're just giving you content. We'd much prefer to be talking with you than just talking to you. Let's look at some numbers here. We'll get this chat in, and then we'll go talk about the 6 picks real quick before we get to the rest of the chats. All right, Rolando, for you, tight end matchups this week. TJ Hockenson for the Detroit Lions. That is a road game against Cleveland, 1 o'clock. Cleveland, fantasy points on the left side of your screen to the tight end position, 18th. And then Dallas Goedert for the Philadelphia Eagles, home against New Orleans, 1 o'clock. New Orleans, where do they sit? 25th, so 8th fewest. Certainly in the red, certainly not as good of a matchup. However, for the Detroit Lions today, no Jared Goff. So I definitely think that anytime you're talking about a backup quarterback situation there, even if the matchup is a little bit worse for Goddard, I would go with Goddard in this situation. Tim Boyle, I believe, is the backup. He's the one that I have listed on my charts, and I do believe that is the name that I've heard. Tim Boyle, if that is the correct name, that would deserve a who? Yeah, and that's enough reason to go away from Hockenson. I do think that Hawkinson's numbers as of late have not quite been what you would want anyway. But either way, let me take a look just to make sure. I do want to see what the numbers have been for Hockenson. I know they haven't been great, but as long as I'm referencing that, I don't want to just reference it with no actual information given. He is tight end 5 for the year. It might have just been the last game that I'm thinking of. Of course, not a good situation in that Pittsburgh game. Cash Money was there for that one. 0 fantasy points. Only 1 target in that game. Had been seeing plenty of targets before that. I think it's certainly possible that with a backup quarterback that they end up targeting him, but I just don't know that I can trust. Wanted to put a player in my fantasy lineup in that situation and not knowing at all what you might get in that one. So I think a safer play here is Goddard, and at the tight end spot, as always, it's tough to find consistent production, so I think you probably lean towards the safer play. Hope that helps you out there, Rolando. Let me see if there are any follow-ups from you here. And if not, I'm going to slide right into some 6 picks information next. No follow-ups. So thank you, Rolando. Hope that helps you out. And as always, hope whichever guy you go with there, hope that they do crush it for you. All right, before we get to the rest of the chats, we will get to those real quick next. Let's talk about our 6 picks game. Make sure if any of you guys are interested in getting in this game this week, you have an opportunity to get the information. This is the thumbnail for this week. For week 11, if you haven't played 6 picks before, it's very simple. It's just a game for you guys, the viewers. There's no cost or anything like that. But there are 6 fantasy matchups that occur within the same games. We have them on that specific video. You can find it on our channel right now, and you can also find the link in the description area below. Pick the winners of all 6 of those matchups based on who you think will have the better fantasy scoring day using PPR scoring. We keep the standings all season long, and those picks will close at 1 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday, which is today, game day. So you have some time to make those picks. We'll talk about where we're at. Last week in week 10, it was Bill Romanowski with a great 5-1 week. Bill Romanowski did lead the way in week 10, and he does move up 1 slot on that leaderboard. With a minimum of 3 weeks right now, we keep it by win percentage because we understand that some of you will play different amounts of weeks. Vansco leads the way. You see the numbers there. Bill Romanowski in second, and Cash Money Wilson rounding out the leaderboard right now. We will go ahead and put our banner up at the bottom of the screen as long as it doesn't conflict with any of our other graphics, and we will let that roll during the show. Just to let you guys know, if you do want to get into that game, that link is in, as I said, the description area below, and you can get over there and make your 6 picks for the week, get your name on that leaderboard, and show off your fantasy football skills. All right, let's get back to the chats. Let's try to keep up with the chats as best as possible today. Cash Money Wilson is up next. My picks are in, and Hockenson is a must start. Interesting, Cash Money. I don't know if I agree with the must start because of the backup situation. Interesting one there. We'll see what happens there, Cash Money. A lot of Detroit Lions love there. Last week, obviously, he wasn't much of a factor in that game that you were at. So we will see how that one works out. JT Movin is up next. Welcome back to the stream, JT Movin. You say Bateman or Devontae Smith with Lamar being out. Let's get you some matchups. My instinct here is there's different ways we can look at this situation. I would have liked Rashad Bateman because of the fact that Marquise Brown is out, but I'm extremely hesitant with a backup quarterback back there for Baltimore, and that backup is I have listed as Trace McSorley on my grid, but that is not who I believe is playing today. I think it's Huntley is the backup there for Baltimore. Either way, dicey situation anytime you're talking about a backup. If you want to look at matchups, Baltimore road game against Chicago at 1 o'clock, left side of your screen, fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Chicago currently allowing the 4th most, so it is a good matchup. And on the Philadelphia side, home against New Orleans, 1 o'clock. New Orleans currently offering up, 6th. So given the fact that it's the matchups are similar, I think you roll with Smith here because of the fact that it gets you away from that backup situation. I think it's the safer play. Again, you expect Devontae Smith, who has played well, to kind of be their main guy in Philly. So that does make you feel good about the Smith situation. He has been a little bit more up and down. I've certainly had some weeks where I've been really high in him and others where I've been like, oh, what's going on? But he is currently wide receiver 25 for the year, averaging 12.6. And I'm trying to call up on my other screen some stats here just to help you out with that. Here we go, taking a look at the recent games and what he has done. In the last couple of games, 6 targets in each of them, 116 yards in week 9, 66 yards in week 10, 1 touchdown in week 9, 2 last week in week 10, and 23 fantasy points in each of those weeks. I think you can roll with Devontae Smith here. I think that would be the choice that I would make in this situation. Again, JT Movin, there's arguments to be made on both sides that perhaps Bateman does get enough volume here without Marquise Brown that it makes it worthwhile on that side. So kind of an interesting toss-up kind of thought there, but I think that the safer play to me is Devontae Smith because of the quarterback situation. That'd probably be the way that I would lean if it was me making that choice. Hope that helps you out, JT Movin. And as always, whichever guy you go with there, hope they do crush it for you. All right, let's see who's up next here. Vansco says, a lot of Hawkinson talk today. I'm not stoked about Hawkinson, but it feels like we got to play him. I could see that thought there. Peter D'Angelo is here. Peter, I believe you've been here before, so welcome back. If not, and I'm wrong, then welcome, but I do believe you have been here. You say need a running back, 2 full PPR. RB2 you need. Mark Ingram or David Montgomery. Well, this is a good situation if you're choosing between these two guys. Philly seems to have a worse run defense, and Ingram did pretty well against Tennessee last week, but Montgomery is Montgomery, and he's been looking good. Let me see if there are any follow-ups from you, Peter, here. I'm wondering, is there any way, I feel like just on instinct, that my first response would be here, is there any way you could play both of these guys? Because I feel like they're both, if there's some way that your flex spot is available with a wide receiver who might not have as good of a matchup, something of that sort. We know that Alvin Kamara not playing, so we expect Mark Ingram to have all of the volume there, and David Montgomery, all of the volume in Chicago as well. So we take a look at the matchups, see if that helps you out there. Let's see. New Orleans on the road, Philadelphia, 1 o'clock. Philadelphia. See, this is what happens. Now I have to take down the bottom thing here so that my graphics aren't impeded with there. That's a little better for you. What were we talking about here? New Orleans, Philadelphia. Philadelphia sits fantasy points to the running back spot, number 8 on the left side of your screen. So yes, a very good matchup there for Mark Ingram. Chicago against Baltimore. Baltimore, 12th most fantasy points to the running back spot. So not even to the halfway point, just underneath the green. Also a good matchup there. You know what Montgomery has done, and you know what he's capable of. And Mark Ingram, of course, also had a nice week last week in the absence of Alvin Kamara. I do want to find exact numbers here just to help you out. I will say this. I have Mark Ingram in a couple of spots. I have slotted him in where I could today, even over some other players who, projection-wise, I know Yahoo, like if I usually reference Yahoo because I feel like a lot of you probably play on that platform. Yahoo's projections are not always what I like to go by. Sometimes I feel like they almost get in the way from thinking your way through some of these other things, but I do think there is some value to be had there. Ingram last week, 21 fantasy points, 47 yards on the ground. Also had 7 targets, 4 catches, 61 yards through the air with a touchdown. So Ingram certainly had a nice game last week. In terms of Montgomery, coming off the bye week, I believe, for Chicago, right? Yeah, they just had the bye. So if there was any concerns with him getting back in the fold, he obviously played the week before the bye off of his injury. Did put up 10 fantasy points in that game, 13 rushes, 63 yards, 2 catches on 2 targets, 17 through the air. So I would expect either one of these two guys to be playable. I actually don't think you can go wrong. I'm curious, Peter, let me see if there are any follow-ups from here. You do say here that you have A.J. Brown and your flex and your running back one is CMC. So you're certainly not going to get rid of McCaffery. I might consider, I know this seems awful to say this, but here are the numbers for wide receivers. A.J. Brown for Tennessee, that is a home game against Houston. Fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver spot by Houston is 11, so it's a good matchup. However, the pass game in Tennessee has not been stellar this year. You would think that they would probably be handling Houston pretty nicely in this game. So you would think they potentially wouldn't have to pass the ball a lot, might be able to run it. As a matter of fact, I think a very sneaky play today is, again, Donta, I think is how you say his name, but I don't know that I've still heard a consensus on whether it's Donta or Deontay Foreman, who is now the running back for Tennessee, splitting time with Adrian Peterson. However, their other running back, Jeremy McNichols, is out in this game. So it's now only the two of them. And it does seem that Foreman has been on the better side of that split. Not only that, Donta Foreman this is kind of a revenge game for him against Houston. So some reason why he might have a big game against a very bad run defense. All that leads me to say that I'm curious about what action A.J. Brown sees today. In the last 2 games, under double-digit fantasy points in each, 9 in Week 9 and 3 in Week 10. He has had a couple of good games before that. I think A.J. Brown is a tough guy to sit at any time because he's such a good player. But in this particular situation, I think I'm not going to tell you that you should sit A.J. Brown here, but I'm going to say consider the possibilities there. Take a look at your opponent and find out if there are any other reasons why playing A.J. Brown is a big help to your team. Like perhaps he's starting Ryan Tannehill and you want to split that. If you're favored, to try to make it tougher for him to make up the difference there. But I think it's at least worth a consideration, Peter, about getting both of these guys in there and rolling with those two guys. I don't know that I would say that every week, obviously because A.J. Brown, like I said, is a top player, but worth a consideration here. If you decide not to go that way, man, I think this is a little bit of a toss-up. I think both of them are going to play well. I think probably if you're in this situation because it's a toss-up, I talk about those factors all the time that I consider when making the decisions, and that is ability, volume, matchup, and game script in that order. I will lean on that the way I normally talk about it, and that David Montgomery, to me, would be the higher tier player over Mark Ingram. And so many of the other factors are similar. I think I would probably go Montgomery ahead of Ingram here just because of that. Not because I think Ingram is not going to play well. I do. But if you have to make a choice between these two, I would probably lean Montgomery. But I think either way, you're going to be okay. And I think if either one of them has a bad game here, it's going to be an upset, right? I think they should both have good games today. So hopefully in that situation, if you do choose one of them, it's not going to be a situation where one of them plays well and the other one doesn't. And it just so happens that the one you pick is the one that doesn't have the good day. So I think you're going to be fine, Peter, here either way, but a lot of things to consider. I hope a lot of that information that I gave you helps. Let us know what decisions you end up going with there. And whichever way you go, I do hope that they do crush it for you. Up next is Saclane Mushtag back again. And you say, I have Kyler on a bye week next week. I dropped Hubbard as he was the only droppable player. Sure, understand that. Droppable player I have on the bench and picked up Justin Fields for next week as he plays the Lions and has huge rushing upside. I have also been carrying Justin Fields on one of my rosters all season long. Interestingly enough, in that roster, I have one of my leagues. You have to have 2 quarterbacks all the time. It's not a super flex league, but you have to have 2. And Fields has been my second guy. I actually just dropped him for Cam Newton because my first quarterback has been Ryan Tannehill, and I needed to take a shot at Tannehill. Has not really produced as much as probably what we've all been looking for. So that was my reasons for dropping Fields. It's not because I don't think that he is in line to have some good days as well. So I think that definitely Fields over Hubbard is a good pickup there for you, Saclane. I can't argue with that one at all. Hope he does work out for you, especially on that bye week. Tim Grochik is here with us. Miles Sanders or Josh Jacobs? Let's take a look at the matchups here. I will give you my instinct thought, and I will also give you some matchups. Let's put back up because I think it's not going to interfere with our graphics anymore. I put the banner back up for you here. Let's take a look here. Miles Sanders for Philadelphia. That is, again, 1 o'clock home against New Orleans. Left side of your screen, fantasy points to New Orleans spot, to the running back spot. New Orleans, third fewest, firmly in the red there. Josh Jacobs for Las Vegas. That is home game against Cincinnati, 405, and Cincinnati sits at number 6. So a very good matchup there for Jacobs. Sanders coming back from IR is a concern, how much playing time they give him. In addition, I am about at the point where I'm very off of all of the Philadelphia running backs at this point. I think kind of what they proved while Sanders was out was it doesn't seem like they have really much of a pecking order in that offense. It seems like they're just going to roll with like whoever at this point between Gainwell and Boston Scott and Jordan Howard and now Miles Sanders. I don't know how in the world that we as fantasy players are supposed to figure out who to play on any given week with all those guys. Yeah, it does seem like Miles Sanders should be the guy, but do we feel like Miles Sanders was returning the type of value that he should have been returning all along this year before the injury? I'm not sure that he has. Normally, I would say that Sanders, I would think, would be the higher tier player over Josh Jacobs by a little bit, not a lot. But taking a look at what Sanders had been doing, even when he was healthy, he's only had 2 games over double digits, 2 games in double digits all season long. So that's not great for a guy that you would expect to have more involvement there. The last 2 games he played 9 fantasy points and 4 fantasy points. I'm assuming that the injury was in week 7. He might have missed some time there, but even before that, he has data for 7 games and he only has 2 of them in double digits. So that being said, I think that combined with the fact that I'm just not high on the Philadelphia backfield at all anymore is enough to make me lean towards Josh Jacobs here. The numbers for Jacobs over the course of the entire season, in every game that Jacobs has data, he has only been under double digits once, and that was in week 10 against Kansas City. So he has 7 games where he has, been in the lineup and had fantasy points on his card here, his scorecard, we'll say. And all of those weeks, 6 weeks, double digits or better, only one that is not. And a better matchup. I think all of that information is enough to make you go towards Josh Jacobs here over Miles Sanders. Hope that helps you out there, Tim. Hope whichever guy you go with there that they do crush it for you. And let's go ahead and get that off the screen, and we'll go to our next comment here, and that is from JJ Witt. JJ Witt, one of our regulars here who we frequently refer to as JJ Watt. So welcome back, JJ Witt. Glad to have you on the stream here. You say, how's it going? I say, not bad. How's it going, JJ? You say Alex Collins or Zach Moss, PPR, and DJ Moore or Mike Williams. We did find out that, unfortunately, Chris Carson, it looks like, is going to be out for the rest of the season with that unfortunate injury that he has had there. So certainly that puts Alex Collins back in play. Let's take a look at some numbers here in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot for the matchups. Seattle, that is a home game against Arizona. 425 game. Arizona on the left side of your screen. Currently, fantasy points allowed to the running back spot, 24th. So that is 9th fewest. Zach Moss for Buffalo, home game against Indianapolis, 1 o'clock start time. Indianapolis sits at 2nd fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. And again, Zach Moss is going to split time there, as always, with Devin Singletary. You do like the Moss side of the split most of the times because of the fact that Moss is the guy that they favor at the goal line. What I do want to see is I want to check some data here on Collins just to take a look at what his volume has been in the past couple of games, because I'm a little bit uncertain of where he's at in terms of the Collins-Rashad Penny split. For Collins, 10 rushes each of his last 2 games. He did have a bye week in there. He has been under double digits in the last 3 games in a row. He did have 17 fantasy points in week 6 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I look up Rashad Perry, does that make me? I'm scrolling and not seeing his name here. Penny. I'm sorry, I said Perry. Rashad Penny. I just want to see what his split was. 6 carries in week 7, 7 carries in week 8. So it does seem like Collins has had the better side of that split. Penny's numbers are nothing to speak of at all. It doesn't mean that couldn't change around. But I think that's enough to make you think that if you have to trust somebody, both of these guys in a split situation, that the better matchup is there for Collins. You just kind of have to hope that the volume is there. But either one of these guys are going to be in that volume situation. And I can't say that I'm entirely familiar with goal line touches on whether or not it's been Collins or Penny that's been getting them. I would think it's probably been Collins because of Penny returning from injury as well. Either way, of all those factors, including the matchup, I think it's enough to make you lean towards Collins here and hope that that's enough. I do think it's close, but I think it's kind of a little bit of a gross choice on either side here. But I'm thinking leaning Alex Collins based on the data there. And then if we look at your other question here for the wide receivers, DJ Moore and Mike Williams, matchup-wise, Carolina, that is a home game against Washington, 1 o'clock, and Washington, left side of your screen, allows the second most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Mike Williams for the LA Superchargers, home against Pittsburgh. That's Sunday Night Football. And Pittsburgh at 15 on your matchup on the left side of your screen in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. So the matchup is in favor of DJ Moore. We don't know exactly how things will change because of Cam Newton being the starter there in Carolina, but I think in this situation, you probably take that chance. DJ Moore currently wide receiver 15, averaging 14.7, and Mike Williams is wide receiver 17, averaging 15.5. However, the Williams average is quite deceptive because he has had 4 games, 20 plus, actually 22 in week 1, 22 in week 2, 33 in week 3, 37 in week 5. The rest of the weeks, he has gotten you 0, basically. 2 fantasy points in week 4, 5 fantasy points in week 6, 4 in week 8, 8 in week 9, 7 in week 10. He has turned into a definite boomer bust guy. I certainly don't love that. I would much rather have a more consistent production to be able to count on there. It's tough to be in a situation where you just don't know what you're going to get. Perhaps there is an argument for a higher ceiling or higher upside because of those big games, but certainly that comes with a lower floor. So it does depend on what type of a play you need here. If you are in a spot where you need to swing for the fences, where you feel like you're significantly behind in your matchup, perhaps that's enough reason to think about going towards Williams. When you compare it to DJ Moore's stats, only 3 games under double digits for the year. 3 out of the last 5 over double digits. However, the last 2 were under 8 in week 9, 6 in week 10. Of course, the quarterback play has been up and down there. But when he did have consistent quarterback play, and it was Sam Darnold to start the year, 15, 22, 21, 32, certainly you expect DJ Moore to be the main guy there. Perhaps Cam Newton has more of a rapport with Robbie Anderson. We don't know that for sure yet. We saw the press conference with Anderson. Who knows what that means? But in this situation, I think to me, the safer play is Moore. The higher tier player is Moore. The guy that you expect to be most likely the number 1 guy in his team is Moore. Keenan Allen is the number 1 guy for LA. And that's what causes that situation where you have that boomer bust because he's not necessarily going to be the top guy that he looks for. The targets have been there all the way through for DJ Moore. The fewest targets he's had was 7. That's happened a couple times, both of the last 2 weeks. Of course, right, we know that the situation with the quarterback play is a little bit more of a question mark there. But when we look at targets for Mike Williams, he has had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games with less targets than that. And that includes all 4 of his last games. He has had fewer targets than DJ Moore has, 5, 5, 5, and 6 in that order. And the catches he's had in those 4 games, 2, 2, 2, and 4. So we kind of see where that's at. I think all that information is probably enough to make you kind of feel the same thoughts that I'm thinking here, JJ. And I think it's DJ Moore that you probably would trust a little bit more in this situation. Obviously, like I said, there might be circumstances where you might think otherwise. Your roster well. Trust that. But in my thoughts here, I lean probably Alex Collins and DJ Moore and hope that helps you out there, JJ. Let's see. We are about 25 minutes to game time, so I'm keeping an eye on the clock just to know when we have to get to lightning mode. Up next here is Chris. Thank you, JJ Witt, for the chat, or JJ Watt. Welcome back to the stream. Glad to have you with us again today. Getting the 6 picks there, JJ. You got to play our 6 picks game. Chris Genova is back with us. Mike Williams or Mike Gallup. Thanks for the chat, Chris. Welcome back. I know Chris had been here before, I believe. Fantasy numbers on the left side of your screen. Again, we already talked about Mike Williams for the LA Chargers against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh at number 15. Gallup for Dallas. Kind of rhymes, against Kansas City, 425 today, road game. Kansas City sits at 18. So kind of in the same area, a little bit higher for Pittsburgh, not significantly. In my opinion here, without Amari Cooper, unfortunately out with the protocols, we hope that he is healthy through all of that. Obviously, we never want to see anybody in those situations. I do think that's enough to have you start Gallup here instead of Williams. I know that Gallup is returning, hasn't played as many games, but I just feel like I'm too hesitant about Mike Williams at this point because it's been so up and down. I'm sure at some point Mike Williams will have the opportunity to turn it around. It's just that we haven't seen it. And, you like to be able to see those things. I think I just feel like leaning towards Gallup here. Yes, there's less data to go on, and I'm trying to scroll through just to find his information, but he is so far down the list. I don't even know that I will find his name. Well, here he is, Michael Gallup, currently wide receiver 141 for the year. Of course, he missed a lot of time, averaging 7.4. And last week he did have 5 targets, 3 catches, 42 yards, 7 fantasy points. In game 1, which was the other game that he played, 7 targets, 4 catches, 36 yards, 8 fantasy points. Each of those games, I don't believe any of their other receivers were out for Dallas, so you would expect a little bit of an uptick in volume this week is available there for Gallup. And I do think that is the situation I would lean towards here, Chris. I think there's an argument you can make an argument either way on these guys. And that's why I always talk about, fantasy football is all about opinions. By no means do I feel like I'm the only opinion out there. So I always do try to back that up with some data, hoping that it helps kind of lead you towards the decision that you feel is best. I think to me, I probably lean Gallup in this situation. Chris, hope that helps you out. And whichever guy you go with there, hope they do crush it for you. Ryan N is up next. Hi, Ryan N. You say hi as well. You say Hockenson or Arnold in PPR. Concerned with Hockenson's quarterback and concerned with Arnold's matchup. Let's put up numbers to take a look at those. And TJ Hockenson, Detroit against Cleveland, road game, 1 o'clock. Cleveland is fantasy points to the tight end spot. Where do they fall here? 18th, so kind of right in the middle. And Dan Arnold for Jacksonville. Arnold, let's see here. Home against San Francisco, 1 o'clock game. San Francisco 24th. So actually, even though that's the 9th fewest, it's not like it's a significant difference between Cleveland. I mean, if Cleveland was up in the green, I might use that more in my decision here, but I think that the hesitation about the quarterback situation in Detroit would be my biggest concern here. And Dan Arnold has had a pretty decent amount of involvement in that offense as of late for Jacksonville. So I know Hockenson is really the guy that you trust as one of your main guys, but I do think this is a situation where you might be able to go away from him. Again, Hockenson currently tight end 5, averaging 11.9, coming off a bad game last week. And Dan Arnold currently tight end 18. He's averaging 8.2. And as we look at his targets in previous weeks for comparison, we do see 10 targets in week 8, 7 targets in week 9, 8 targets in week 10. He has had over double digits each of those last 3 games and 4 of the last 5 overall. And can we say the same about Hockenson? Has he had, I don't know that he's been, well, let's take a look. He has been double digits actually in 3 of his last, 7 actually. So overall, yes, you trust TJ Hockenson overall as the higher tier player. And normally I would say go with, those factors I always talk about, that the tier comes first. But in this situation, because the quarterback has such of an impact for Detroit, I think that's enough to make you go Arnold here. Could things work out well for Boyle? Possibly, but I don't know if you want to trust your fantasy week on that uncertainty that you would have there. So certainly understand what you're thinking there, Ryan. I think for me, I might take this opportunity to lean towards Arnold. This is one of those situations where I've talked about it before. When analyzing other players' decisions, it's a whole different ballgame than when it's your own team. Because, I know this personally for me, because when I make my lineup choices, I feel a certain amount of investment into my players. Hawkinson's a guy that you drafted and you expect to play well and you want him to play well, and he's my guy. It would be tougher for me if this was my choice to make this change. And I understand why that question that you have here, Ryan, why it is what it is. Because I feel like if it was me, I'd be like, oh, but I don't know. TJ Hawkinson's really good, and I really want to play him. Looking at this from the outside, without having that investment, that is what makes it available for me to say, yeah, in this spot here, you might be better off going Arnold. It's just tough to make that call when it's actually your investment. And I understand that. But I do think that from the outside looking in, without that investment thought here, I think that I probably think Arnold is a safer option this week. And could I be off on that one? It's possible. I always hope to get as many of these as close as possible for you guys. If I was an absolute, got them all right, then I would just be sitting here playing 1,000 fantasy leagues and winning them all. Nobody can do that, including me. So I'm not going to present myself that way. But all that being said, my thought here is Arnold is a very reasonable thought to go with if you decide to go that way. I can't fault you if you want to trust the higher tier player here, but I do think that it is very, very reasonable to think that Arnold might be a fine choice for you here, Ryan. Hope all that helps you out, and whichever you guys we go with there, I do hope they crush it for you. 20 minutes. Let me see if there are any follow-ups here from you, Ryan, if my computer cooperates, which it's not right now. There we go. I don't see any. So thank you, Ryan, for the chat. Good luck to you there. Let me try to catch up a little bit so we don't get too far behind game time here. Cole Ward is up next. Pick one for my flex, Cole, you say. Brandon Cooks, Tyler Lockett, or Michael Gallup. Tyler Lockett, a player that I've never been very high on this year. You guys that are regulars, you know that. But we do look at the matchup there. Tyler Lockett is just so boomer bust. Let's start with the order you have him there. Brandon Cooks for Houston against Tennessee. Road game for Houston. Tennessee to the wide receiver spot sits at number 1. We may not need to go any further with this one because I was already leaning towards Brandon Cooks as my instinct answer here. I think the volume he has had for Houston this year has been significant. He is currently, wide receiver 21 for the year, averaging 14.8. We compare that to Tyler Lockett, who is currently 28 overall on the list. Let's take a look at some volume so we can compare these two players before I talk about the matchups. Cooks, target-wise, last 4 games, 13, 7, 6, and 14. Only 2 games under double digits all season long, and his last 2 games have been 20 and 12. Lockett, overall, volume-wise, we would expect Russell Wilson to be more healthy today. Lockett, 4 games over double digits this year, 26, 32, 11, and 26. The games that are under are 7, 6, 6, 3, and 4. Last week was the 4. Target-wise, in the last 2 games, he has had 13 targets and 8 targets. However, in that game with 8 targets, it was only 2 catches. Tyler Lockett is such a weird player. Week 8, 13 targets, 12 catches. Week 10, 8 targets, 2 catches. Was that a Russell Wilson thing? Possibly, but it's not the only game where, week 6, 7 targets, 2 catches. Just such a weird player. So hard to predict. Matchup-wise, Seattle, home game against Arizona, 425. Arizona on the left side of your list sits at left side of your screen. 21st. So the matchup clearly in favor of Cooks here. And then Gallup, we talked about a little bit already for Dallas on the road against Kansas City. Kansas City sits at 18th. I think there are, we don't know out of all these 3 guys, the guy here who would be considered the number 1 option on their team at the wide receiver spot is Cooks. Yes, it's Houston. And yes, you expect more possibly from Seattle and from Dallas in terms of offense. But I do think that him being the guy that you would trust as the number 1 guy and combine that with the matchup being as good as it is, I think is enough to make you look towards Cooks here. Again, Lockett is a guy that I've never been too high on because of the boomer bust, especially in a flex. You at least want to have a consistent number and a nice floor at your flex because you hope that your main guys win you your matchup and your flex guy just gives you the production you need. You don't want that guy to lose you your game, and that's been my thoughts with Lockett, especially someone who I've had on rosters in past seasons. Last year, especially, was very frustrating with Lockett. And then Gallup, yes, I think there's possibility for a good game. There are some question marks there that simply don't exist with Cooks. I think you know where Cooks has been all year long. And so while I don't think Gallup is a bad play in some circumstances, I think that Cooks is probably the thought in this particular circumstance, Cole. Hope that helps you out there. And hope that whichever guy you go with there, I do hope that they crush it for you, as I always say. Peter D'Angelo, we had that one as a follow-up already on his last one, so we got that one. We got Lou DDD on the stream here. You say Jimmy G or Danny Dimes. Quarterback question here. I think the first one we've had today about quarterbacks. Here are the fantasy matchups here. Jimmy G for San Fran against Jacksonville. Jacksonville fantasy points allowed in the quarterback spot 20th. And Daniel Jones for the Giants. I've heard some things so far about the Giants offense. That is a road game, Tampa Bay Monday Night Football. Tampa sits at 10th. It looks like Kenny Galladay is back. It looks like Saquon Barkley is possibly back. I believe Sterling Shepard is out for this game. The offense has been so in flux for the Giants all year long. That being said, do we feel that Garoppolo has been, a consistent guy otherwise? I'm not so sure. Let me call up actual numbers on the left side of my screen because actual numbers are always better than just thoughts. Garoppolo currently quarterback 22, averaging 16.2. Daniel Jones currently quarterback 19, averaging 16.6. The averages are fairly similar. Let's take a look at individual games. Garoppolo in the last 4 games, 7, 27, 20, and 15. Let me take a look at that real quick again. He has had, 1, 2, 3 games at 20 or more all season long. That's kind of the level that I would look at here is that 20 level. Daniel Jones, let's see where he's at recently. The last 4 games, 7, 18, 17, 18. He's had 3 games over 20. They were all early in the season. This is a real kind of gross toss-up between these two, but these are the decisions that have to be made in fantasy football, right? I think there's more upside from Jones here, but I think that Garoppolo might be the safer play. That might be one of these situations where it really comes down to what you need in your lineup, and in particular, if you have any situations that lean you one direction or the other. When I say that, what I mean is check your matchup. The player that you're playing against, perhaps they have a wide receiver that you would share with one of these two guys. And I like to look at this situation a lot because to me, if you are sharing a quarterback with an opponent's wide receiver or vice versa, then what comes into play here is, are you favored to win or do you need help to win your matchup? If you are favored to win, or perhaps you're already ahead because of Thursday night's game, and you share those players, it's going to make it more difficult for your opponent to make up points. Because in all theory, if that wide receiver has a nice game, your quarterback is going to have a nice game right along with him. But it works the other way as well. If you need to make up points, it's going to be tougher for you to make up points if you're sharing those players. So take a look at those situations and help you make that decision. Then there might be players involved here. Perhaps a Deebo Samuel is in your opponent's lineup. If that's the case, then you're going to offset that with where you're at in that matchup. If you're winning and you're sharing Jimmy G with Deebo Samuel, especially given the fact that you would think Jimmy G has the safer floor, that's a lot of reasons to think that he's the one that you would choose here because it would make it more difficult for your opponent to make up that ground. But if it's the other way around and you feel like Daniel Jones has the higher ceiling, then you might want to take a chance on Jones here to see if he can get you there. And also, it's going to do you no good to make up ground if you are sharing that quarterback with the wide receiver on the other team. So those are the things that make this decision for you. Again, this is not I don't feel like this is a straight, it's not a significant enough difference between these two for me to say it's absolutely going to be this is the guy I lean towards, because I do think, and I'll look to see if there are any follow-ups from you. I do think if you're still on the stream here, Lou, feel free to hit me up with a follow-up about whichever way, if there is anything in common. I do simply think that makes your decision for you what you need. If you feel like you are in a better spot to win, I definitely think the safer floor is to your advantage, and I think that's Jimmy G, just because Danny Dimes hasn't had as many good games. But I do think there is some potential for a higher ceiling, especially because the Giants-Kansas City game could potentially be somewhat of a high-scoring game, and Garoppolo playing Jacksonville, that could end up into a game script of run game heavy, which, of course, San Francisco always wants to be anyway. So those are the factors involved here, Lou, and hope whichever guy you go there, hope that information helps. And I hope they do crush it for you. All right, next up we got, what in the world is happening? My screen is going crazy. Let's see where we are to game time. We are at just about 10 minutes, so we are almost in hurry-up offense here. Cole Ward, I have CMC and Cook at running back, and Deontay Johnson and Jamar Chase already playing, so that was a follow-up for your flex. I think you have some nice players in line there as well, so I do think that you're in good shape there. I like the lineup, and let's see, Lou D, you say Danny plays Tampa. Did I say that wrong? Yes, I did say that wrong. You're right. It is not Kansas City. It is Tampa Bay. Forgive me for confusing those two teams. I don't know why would I ever want to confuse Tom Brady with anybody else? As you guys know, I'm Bills Mafia up here in Buffalo. So let me put the matchups back up just in case I gave you the wrong matchup. But I do think, quarterback. I do think I gave you the right matchup there. Tampa Bay. No, I have no idea what I said at this point. At any rate, Jones against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay fantasy points to the quarterback spot sits at 10. And then Jimmy G against Jacksonville. Jacksonville does sit at 20. So, yeah, it is a better matchup for Jones. That does, of course, that does probably make you lean a little bit here. Again, I think the higher ceiling is definitely Jones, especially given that matchup. I think in the absence of any other shared players here, that might be enough. That might be enough to make you lean Danny Dimes there. Again, just kind of depends on exactly what you need there. But I think that I might take the chance on Dimes if it were me in this situation, but understanding that there is a little bit of variance there in what he might return to you. Hope that helps you out, Ulu. Sorry for calling out the wrong team there, but glad that you got that straight for me. I do appreciate that. All right, we're going to be going into a hurry-up offense here. So let's try to get through all these before game time. We're going to put up a little bit less information and a little bit more instinct here to get through all these chats, as long as my computer screen stops putting me in bad spots here. All right, we got Bo, Ryan Curtin on the stream. Welcome, Bo, Ryan Curtin, Terry, Scary Terry, or Devontae Smith. McLaurin playing up against, where are they here? Carolina and Devontae Smith. I will put up some information for this one because I think this is one that I want to investigate a little bit. I like Scary Terry a whole lot, and we've got no Ricky Seals-Jones for Washington, so that does impact the volume there. Washington, Carolina, where do they sit here? Carolina, bad matchup, of course, third fewest, and Devontae Smith for Philadelphia is a good matchup we talked about against New Orleans. 6th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Ugh, tough one because my instinct here says McLaurin, but if you like the matchup there and you do say Smith there, I think that the better matchup is Devontae Smith there. I think this is a toss-up for you. I know I said hurry up mode, but it's so difficult for me to not look at stats from these. That's why I get behind on these chats. I really want to give you all the information that I can. Terry McLaurin currently wide receiver 18 for the year. Devontae Smith currently 25. McLaurin averaging 15.3. Smith averaging 12.6. That is a significant difference between the two. It's not like that's nothing. McLaurin, the last few games, has had a couple under double digits, but has had some good games. Smith has been up and down a little bit himself, but has been playing well as of late, playing very well. Man, the Philly offense scares me sometimes. My instinct here is to lean with McLaurin, but I think that you are not making a poor decision if you go with the matchup to go with Smith. That's probably the best way that I can put it. So I hope that helps you out there, Bo. I think if it were me, I probably would end up falling with McLaurin because I simply feel he's the higher tier player, and that's how I tend to look at it. But like I said, I can't fault you if you take that matchup and go with Smith. Hope all that information helps you out. Whichever guy you go there, hope they crush it for you, Bo. We got 7 minutes to game time. Tiffany Harrell is back with us this week, and you say Elijah Moore or Jameson Crowder. Obviously playing for the same team, so I think I have enough time to actually look up a little bit of information here on both of those guys. My instinct here says Elijah Moore. With Joe Flacco starting, I don't know. It's kind of hard to know exactly how this is going to go. Elijah Moore currently wide receiver 51, averaging 9.8. The average for, where do I find him? How far down? Why does my screen keep going away from here? Sorry about that. Jameson Crowder, excuse me. I'm trying to find him on my list here. Crowder is currently 66, averaging 10.9. And where has he been at in recent weeks in terms of targets? Fantasy points, he's been under double digits each of the last 2 games. Target-wise, he's been pretty decent. Flacco in there tells me that perhaps he tries to play a little bit safer than going for the big plays, which I think Elijah Moore would be more of that. However, Moore in the last 4 games, 10, 13, 27, and 13 fantasy points, 6, 6, 8, and 6. So we could try to guess on who Joe Flacco favors, but I think I would always rather lean on data, and the data says the better receiver of recent weeks has been Elijah Moore. I think I would lean on that when making this choice here, Tiffany. Hope that helps you out there. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a weird situation, so kind of brace yourself either way for Joe Flacco there. I don't know how exactly that might go. And the matchup against Miami is probably not terrible if we put up the matchup numbers. And that is, let's see, Miami's 3rd most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. So let's hope, Tiffany, that they both play well, and your decision here, it doesn't matter one way or the other, but I think to me, trusting the data and who has been playing better as of late, scoring more fantasy points, I think Elijah Moore is the guy that I look to there. Hope that helps you out there. So Clay Mushtag is back saying, I'm predicting that A.J. Dillon is RB1 this week and goes nuclear. I could absolutely see that happening. Packer Raybon is here. I think you might be a new viewer here, Packer, so welcome. Pollard or Drake? Let's see if we can do matchups really quick. Just about enough to do that. Pollard for Dallas, Kansas City. Kansas City sits at 18. Drake for Las Vegas. Cincinnati sits at, where are they here? 6th. The matchup is better for Drake. Without looking at numbers, again, we're getting close to game time, so I'm going to try to roll through these a little quicker. I think I probably trust Drake here just a little bit more. I think it is a little bit of a toss-up, but I think I probably would roll with Drake in this situation. Boss Man Fat is here. Welcome, Boss Man Fat. Beasley or Bateman PPR? Cole Beasley has not been doing much as of late, and I question where he's at in this offense at this time. At the same time, Bateman, that is tough when you're rolling with a backup quarterback. Beasley only had 2 targets last week against the Jets. He's had some good targets in other games. Bateman without Marquise Brown. The concern about Beasley, again, this is a tough one. The concern about Beasley to me is his involvement is enough to make me go Bateman here because of Marquise Brown is out, even though it's a backup quarterback. This is a gross choice, but I probably lean a little bit towards Bateman. Look, I would hate to have to make this choice either way. I hate having to make it for you, Boss Man Fat. I'm going to lean a little bit towards Bateman on this one. Hope that helps you out there. Keep it real. Cousins or Newton? I think Cousins, just regardless of the matchup, you know what he's been doing. I think you're going to go with Cousins here. I think we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Cam Newton as of yet. So if you have a viable option, which I think Cousins is it. That being said, what does the matchup say? Minnesota, Green Bay quarterbacks. Is it a bad matchup? 25th. Newton's a good matchup. I still think you probably trust Cousins over the uncertainty there. Christian Espinoza is here. Gibson or Carter? Gibson, the higher tier player, I'm going to trust him. Again, I don't want 3 minutes to game time. Probably not enough time to get you much more than that. I'm going to go instinct for all the rest of these. Gibson is my choice there. Chase Wellner, Kirk or Devontae Smith? Devontae Smith all day. No Kyler Murray. Good matchup for Smith. Barkley or Gibson PPR? Worry about Saquon's health. I think you go Gibson here because I would also worry about Barkley, and it's a Monday night game, and you'd have very few options. I would like to go Gibson there. Anna, Dillon or Connor, non-PPR? I think Dillon is going to have a great game today. I think Connor has the potential to also have a nice game, but I want to roll with A.J. Dillon at this point. James Davila, Miles Sanders or Mike Williams, half-point PPR, another gross one here. Man, that is terrible. I don't trust any of the Philadelphia running backs, and I don't trust Mike Williams either. Holy cow. Can I pick neither on this one? I'm going to instant go with Mike Williams because of Sanders coming back from injury. That's a gross one. Alex R, Chargers or Cowboys D? Chargers playing against Pittsburgh and Cowboys playing against Kansas City. I know I like the Cowboys D, but you're talking about your opponents, and Kansas City is a point-scoring machine. I'll stay away from them, and I'll say Chargers. A. Aladdin is here. 2 minutes to game time. Rolling. Galladay or Gallup? Don't trust Galladay. I trust Gallup more, even though he's been out. I like Gallup here. Thoughts on Bateman? Concerned. I think Bateman, if you have a better option, you stay away from here. Stay away from him here because of the backup quarterback. But in some situations, if you have to go them, or if your other option is not viable or not close, I think you do roll them because of Marquise Brown being out. Christian Espinoza. Sorry, Christian. Gibson or Carter? I think I got this one from earlier. I like Gibson here. Rolando, RG, Kadarius Toney, or Corey Davis. You say thanks again. Thanks once again, Chief. I say no problem. Corey Davis. I don't trust the Giants offense. Aladdin, Bateman, or Sanders. Sanders here because of the quarterback situation. And Dawson still have a good game against San Francisco defense. Or Knox. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I think you can trust Dawson Knox at this point. I think you might mean Dan Arnold against the San Francisco defense. I do like Arnold's volume, but I think Dawson Knox is a fine start. This is the last chat, so I'm going to put some numbers up and hope that it helps. Just in time here, Buffalo, Indianapolis to the tight end spot sits at 6. So a good matchup there for Knox. I would go Knox. Hope that helps you out there, Anna, and hope that you got that just under the bell before game time. And I think we managed to get all those chats in before the game starts. Sometimes the lightning round or the hurry-up offense can be difficult. And I will say this. The way I like to look at fantasy football is I want to give you guys data. Like, as often as possible, I want to give you information that can back up my thoughts. Because I can just, like that lightning round deal, yes, I want to give you answers, But without looking at all that information, sometimes your instinct says one thing, and then you go through the couple of pieces and you're like, well, now we look at these pieces and it might not say exactly that. So this is a data game to me. Like in all cases, if you lean on those, hopefully it gets you the decisions that in the long run give you the edge. I mean, that's what we're all looking for here. That's why a lot of times I say this game is like poker. When you're playing poker, and when I say poker, I mean like Texas Hold'em, if you guys are poker players. Like you're looking for, over the course of time, if you are a good player, the decisions that you make, they get you on the right side of things. You might have good days that are really good. You might have bad days that are really bad. But over the course of time, you want to be a winning player by making the best decisions you can all the time. And then however the cards play out, that's how they play out. To me, this is so similar fantasy football. And that might be one of the reasons why, because I like poker, I'm a poker guy. Might be one of the reasons why I like fantasy football so much, is because it's the challenge of making these decisions, as we got a bug flying around in here, that you want to, over the course of time, come out on the right side of things. And so sometimes, are they going to work out all the time? Not. Of course they're not going to. Do we hope that they work out more often than not and get you where you want to be? Yes, that's what we're always looking for. Holy cow. Right in front of my camera, of course. So we'll try to take care of that once we get into the games. But again, that's what I'm looking at on these. That's why I like to present so much information. Once we get to the lightning round, I want to get you those choices, so I stray away from the information. I would rather do more than that. But we want to get you as much as we can before those games start. So hopefully that all helped you guys out. I do see another chat here from Joshua Loyola. And this is a later game, so we can certainly see if this helps. Defense, Arizona or Dallas? And I don't have a graphic for the defensive side. So what I will do is on my other screen here, let me take a look at the numbers here for fantasy points allowed by the defenses. And I do realize that as I look at my other screen that I did not set a tight end in one of my leagues. So that's unfortunate because I have Tyler Higbee on bye and I meant to do that. But sometimes I get going with a live stream and I don't put my own teams in place. So we'll figure that out. Not a problem. There certainly should be some players in later games. Let's see here. The matchups that we got. You say Arizona or Dallas. So we'll start with Arizona playing against Seattle. Seattle sits at number 17 in terms of fantasy points allowed to the defense. Then Dallas against Kansas City, and Kansas City sits at number 14. So right in the same area. I know that Dallas's defense has been really good. My thought with defenses here is that it's often more about who you're playing than it is about your defense in particular. That being said, I think I probably don't want to play Kansas City as often as possible in any league. Like any defense that I have when they're playing Kansas City, I probably don't want to play them that week. And that's from a standpoint of if you are streaming defenses, that's how I like to look at things. And I do think that the more competitive your league is, the more it's to your advantage to stream defenses. So even my thoughts on defenses have kind of changed over time, in that I'm more looking at the team that I'm playing against than the team that I'm using. So yeah, in this situation, I just don't love having to play against Patrick Mahomes. That's just gross. Perhaps, again, this is another situation where you can look at your opponent and find out, like, if you're playing in your fantasy league against Patrick Mahomes and you are trailing in your matchup and likely to have a tough time to win anyway, then that could make Dallas a winning decision here, because if it goes that direction and you need to make up a lot of points and Dallas picks off Mahomes, that works on both sides. So you're adding to your variance, is what I like to call it, because now if your good defensive day means your opposing quarterback turns in a worse day as well, then you have a chance to make up ground. If that's not the situation, I don't know that I want to go that way at all, because I think that I just, like I said, it's not a situation that I would want. Russell Wilson coming back from injury still. Do we expect him to be better this week? Probably, but I'd probably rather have that situation as far as the team that I'm playing against than the person who we consider the number one fantasy football player in all of football, it's at least at the quarterback spot. So to me, Joshua, I'm going to lean towards Arizona in this one. I think both defenses have had some good weeks here and there, and without actually looking up the actual stats, I'm going to base it purely on the team that they're playing against there. Hope that helps you out there, Joshua. And hope whichever you go with there, hope they do crush it for you. We got DJ Goss back with us this week. You got a question here about Chase Claypool or Bryan Edwards. My first thought here is these are later games, so we can still make that decision and we can take a little bit more time here. Let's put up some information. wide receiver numbers. So the first one is Pittsburgh against the LA Chargers, and matchup-wise, they are 31st, so that is second fewest. That is certainly a not a good matchup. Las Vegas, Cincinnati, 4:05 home game. I'm sorry. Cincinnati sits at 16th, right in the middle of the road. That may offset my thoughts on these two players, and that is, I feel like the player of these two that is a little bit higher up in terms of the tiers, or who I might feel is the more trusted player overall, would be Claypool. And I do think in that offense with Pittsburgh, Roethlisberger, clearing protocols this week. Claypool currently sits at wide receiver 47 for the year, averaging 11.9. Bryan Edwards sits at wide receiver 53, averaging 8.5. They are close in the overall numbers, but the averages are a little bit more significantly different. If I take a look at individual games, Claypool has had reasonably consistent targets, not huge numbers, a couple of games with huge numbers, but most of them have been around 5, 6, 7 in terms of targets for the year. His fantasy points, as you go through game by game, 10, 10, 19, 24, 4, 10, 7. 2 games under double digits, reasonably consistent. When you compare that to Edwards, I think what I'm getting at here is I'm expecting to see a much more up and down screen. And that's kind of what we see here. Edwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games under double digits, one of them being a 0. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 games above. And those numbers are 12, 12, 13, and 18. Target-wise, consistently as well, but more consistently around the 4 number with a couple that are 5 or 6. So the targets have not been significantly more. Yes, the matchup is a little bit better. To me, your decision here, and you're going to have to check your reports for this, and I can't say that I've seen a recent report about Chase Claypool. So let me see if I can call one of those up really quick in terms of his injury status, because Claypool, has been banged up, and that is going to make your decision. You're in a good spot in the fact that you can wait and see if you know anything more before game time. No injury designation for Claypool. That's good news next to his name when I look it up. And here's the Yahoo note on Friday. It says Chase Claypool was not given an injury designation for week 11. All right, I just said that. Said he got into full practice Friday following limited sessions to start the week. Originally expected to miss multiple weeks because of a toe injury. Claypool ended up sitting out just 1 game. On the negative side, Claypool struggled in the 3 games before. Okay, got you. Yahoo, the thing I like the most about Yahoo is their injury stuff. I sometimes when they get into more of the predictions, I somehow start to question those things a little bit more. But I think given the fact that there's no designation for Claypool, I think he's the guy you take here. I feel he's the higher tier player. I think he's had a little bit more volume than Edwards over the course of the season. Yes, Edwards had a nice game last week and has had some nice games. However, I think overall between those two, I think in that situation you trust the volume, and the volume comes before matchup, in my opinion. So that leans me towards Chase Claypool for this one. Hope that helps you out there, DJ Goss, and whichever guy you go with there, I hope they do crush it for you. All right, that gets us through all the chats that we are at right now. Let me go ahead and take down the banner for the 6 picks game, because those picks are closed for the day now. So hopefully you all were able to go in and make your picks that you needed to make. Let's do this. Let's put another promo up for that game, just so that, guys, if you're not aware of the game, if you want to check it out in future weeks, you can do that. It is called 6 Picks. This is the thumbnail that we had for this week. It is a video that's on our channel, no cost or anything like that, but it's simply something for you guys, the viewers, to play along with, show off your skills. It is 6 fantasy matchups that occur within the same games. You pick the winners to all 6 of those matchups in the comments section on that video, based on who you feel will have the better fantasy scoring day. We use PPR scoring. We keep the standings all season long. And as I just said, the picks close every Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, which is what we just had. The recent information that we have last week, it was Bill Romanowski leading the way with a 5-1 record, and a very nice week there allowed him to move up to 2nd place on the leaderboard with a minimum of 3 weeks. You see the numbers: Vansco, Bill Romanowski, and Cash Money Wilson rounding out the leaders in the 6 picks game. So get a chance, check that out in future weeks. Get in there, show off your fantasy football skill. I hope you guys are all enjoying that game as well. Got a great day of football just underway. A lot of good action to watch. Hopefully a nice week 11 for all of you to get a W and continue making your march towards a playoff run and hopefully ultimately a fantasy football championship. We appreciate all of you for joining us. Good luck in the 6 picks game, and hope that you were able to go out and get a W for this week's worth of action as well. That will wrap up our show. Thank you for watching us on TFF Live Sunday Pregame. And as always, Good luck in fantasy. We'll see you next time.